Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another THW playoff preview show here at the Hockey Writers. We're into the second round now. We've already gotten two series that are set. We're still waiting on the other two because there's still some game sevens on tonight. But I'm here joined by Jim Bay, who covers the Tampa Bay Lightning, and also Joey Ganzi, who covers the Florida Panthers. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. I'm, playoffs have been an interesting animal so far. So lots of blowouts back and forth. And then we're getting, in the game sevens, we got some more tighter games, which were expected. So looking like, the Florida Panthers, it was iffy on if they were going to get by the Capitals, but they ended up doing that. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning, same thing with the Maple Leafs. They were on the brink of getting eliminated in game 6, but pulled that out and then pulled it out, of course, in game 7 yesterday. With Vasilevskiy, what can you say about him? What he's done? He just keeps coming to play every time they're going to be eliminated. He just steps up. So we're going to get into this series, which is going to be the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is a rematch from last year in the first round. So we're going to see if it's going to be a different way of how it goes. So let's start with in the season series. I mean, the season series was won by the Panthers. 2-1-1. They had an overtime loss in there. Pretty even. Lightning outscored. The Panthers outscored the Lightning 19-15 in the season series. But as we can see, in the playoffs, it really doesn't matter what happened during the season of how things match up and how things go. So, we'll throw that out the window and start fresh. The Panthers, of course, got through the Washington Capitals in 6 games. Lightning in 7 against the Maple Leafs. Let's start with the matchup between the two big sets of stars, Barkov and Huberdeau, who kind of led the way during the regular season. And then you got Stamkos, Kucherov as the main stars on the Lightning forward group. Braden Point can be thrown in there as well. Palat, all those guys. So starting with you, Jim, how do you think this matchup will go? I mean, it looked like in that Toronto Maple Leafs series, Stamkos and Kucherov stepped up at certain times, but it was their depth that kind of got them through it. What do you think this will be in this series?
Well, I think Stamkos and Kucherov are going to, they're going to do their things. They're playoff tested veterans. Their skill set, they're just going to be fine. I think the couple questions that they're going to have, I know the TNT analysts were wondering if Kucherov was actually at full health. I know somebody on that broadcast question, they thought maybe he looked like he might have been dinged up a little bit, and he has. He's, got a little bit of an injury history. And then, of course, for them on the power play, what's Braden Point going to be? When is he going to come back? Does he come back? How hurt is he? I think those are going to be the big factors. Everything given, they're going to be fine. And that's going to be a great matchup. That's just, just, gives you goosebumps to think, to see those guys, let's say it goes 7 games, going head to head like that. I think very similar to, what you saw in Toronto with Matthews and Marner.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely. And, you're looking at, like Joey, you're looking at the Panthers. I mean, they've got so much depth. I mean, throughout the season, you got Sam Reinhart, we mentioned in the first round, saying, he's on the third line. He's been good. He scored his first playoff goal in that series and waiting a long time to do that, I'm sure, for him. What do you think this matchup will be like? I mean, Barkov and Huberdeau looked really good at times during the series against the Capitals. How do you think they'll match up against Stamkos, Kucherov, and the gang there?
I think they absolutely have some stuff in the back of their head that they remember as clear as day from last series and even during the regular season. In my opinion, though, I don't think Barkov showed up as much as he should have this first round. I believe he did show up in key moments when he needed to, but it's going to come down to how often the team itself stays out of the box, if you ask me, because they allowed at least one power play goal in every single game they played this in the first round. And Tampa is one of those teams that can come out and will make you pay for every little mistake you do. And from top to bottom. I do believe, though, that Huberdeau can absolutely step up, and same thing with Barkov. They're probably some of the hardest working members on the team. And I think and like I said before, I do believe they understand how heavy this matchup is. And I believe they still have the same lessons the harsh lessons, I might add, from last season still buried in their head. So they're probably going to go into the series. And also with the depth they have, they're probably going to be a little more comfortable going around this time. I don't know if they'll pull it out, but I do believe they'll give Tampa another run for their money.
For sure. And, you're looking at, previous season series and even the playoffs, it was very physical and probably one of the more physical matchups. And you wouldn't anticipate that being the case against these two teams. They're rivals, obviously, being from the same area. So, geographically, but, it was really physical, got really heated towards the end of, I believe it was last season, last few games there. So let's look into, I want to talk about this guy because, of course, he's got connections with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Carter Verhaeghe. He used to play for the Lightning, now is with the Panthers and dominated that first round. I believe he had 6 goals. And, how are Jim, we'll go to you. How are the Lightning going to shut this guy down? Because, you're looking at, Barkov, Huberdeau, the main names, they're going to be there. But Verhaeghe is the one that stepped up so far. How are they going to handle this guy?
Yeah, he sure has. I think it's just a matter of like what they did in Toronto with, Marner and Matthews. You don't really shut him down. You just have to kind of, rein him in so he doesn't take over a game, in the absence of any of the other players. And I think that's the big thing. I think when Tampa won against Toronto, that's what they did. They didn't allow the big guns to take over a game, and that's what they're going to have to do here with him.
Yeah, he's been impressive. He's second in goals in the playoffs behind Gensel, Kane, and Kaprizov. So, he's been a surprising contributor. Not that he wasn't a good contributor in the regular season, but Joey, what do you think about Verhaeghe? He's been really good since joining the Panthers and probably one of their better forwards and probably their best forward in the first round.
What Jim said. He's been phenomenal. In game, I believe it was game 5, he set a new franchise record for most points in a playoff game by a Panther with 5, 2 goals, 3 assists. I do believe also how we performed in the playoffs has a lot to also do during his time in Tampa. If you guys remember in the bubble season, he played in, I believe it was 8 playoff games, including 2 in the Stanley Cup Finals. So he has those lessons deep inside his memory. And of course, I'm pretty sure he's looking for revenge after not getting re-signed. But I do believe he understands the intensity and how harsh the playoffs can be. And he has stepped up in a big hurry in times of need. I do believe that will be no different in the second round. I do believe the defense for Tampa, like I said before, is a little bit better. So I don't think he'll do as well, but he will make a noticeable impact.
Yeah. Well, let's move to the defense. These are headed by 2 stars in Aaron Ekblad and Victor Hedman, and they're both probably 2 of the best defensemen in the NHL. And Hedman's got the cups, Ekblad doesn't, but they're pretty much a good matchup. Jim, what do you think about this match? They're going to be playing a ton, and Ekblad just came back from injury before the first round started. What do you think this matchup will be with Hedman going against Ekblad here?
I think you hit on it with Hedman's experience. He's a little older. He's got all the playoff games behind him, and I think that's crucial. I think as you get on in a series, and the pressure starts mounting the closer you get to playing in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's the thing that I think that may separate Hedman from Ekblad. And I know he just came back from injury. He looked, Joey can speak more to this than I can. He looked fine in the Washington series, but as we go on, how much will that, impact his play and impact the team? I think from a skill set, they're both even. I think in this case, Hedman's experience just gives him a little bit of, a little bit more of a favor for them in that sense.
Yeah. And that I do agree. The thing is with both these defenses, they got a lot of depth, and looking at Joey, looking at Ekblad he's bounced back. He's been a really good defenseman since he was drafted. He kind of struggled for a little bit there. Now has come alive back to being that, franchise defenseman when he was drafted. What do you think? How do you think he matches up against the whole defense of the Lightning? I mean, Victor Hedman as well.
I do believe he will make an impact. He did score his first career playoff goal in the first round this past series. He definitely has like an offensive touch, much like Hedman does. But I do believe when it comes to them matching up, I think Hedman's is gonna win it, not only because of experience, but simply because of size. Hedman's a big dude. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Of course, Ekblad is also willing to, play great defense in tight corners and comes in key moments. I do believe he also understands how big the playoffs were. Understand this is not his first playoff rodeo. He was in a first round series against the Islanders back in, I believe it was 2016, if I remember correctly. They did unfortunately lose that series, but I do believe that he'll be able to match up with him pretty well. He does, like I said, have an offensive scoring touch and had arguably a Norris caliber season before he got hurt. But I do believe Hedman may have a physicality edge in that sense, just because he's a big dude. He's like,
yeah.
He's like
No, and the way he defended against the top stars against the Maple Leafs in Game 7 there, I mean, he's just always around. He's just always there. So, and like I said, they're both going to be playing so much in this series, and they played a lot in the first round too. So it's going to be interesting how they match up and how the whole defense of both sides match, because they're pretty deep on both ends. So this is going to be a really good series, I think, from a standpoint of, both offense, forwards, and the defense.
And
so
to jump in on Jim, sorry, no, me interrupt.
No.
To jump in on Jim's point about them being 100%, both Ekblad and Sherratt did get a little dinged up at the end of the first round. They didn't practice this morning. They should be good to go for Game 1, but I don't think they should be 100% ready to go, but it all depends on how much longer they can stay out there before, back to the home, which hopefully won't happen. I'm pretty sure it won't, but still it's noteworthy.
Yeah, no, that is a huge thing, because the Lightning have talked with Braden Point. I mean, there's going to be, seems to see if he's going to be back. I mean, it didn't look very good, and he got hurt there. So we'll see. Let's look at the goaltending now. The last line of defense, Bobrovsky and the Panthers, and of course, we talked about him already, Vasilevskiy, of what he's done. So this is going to be a really good match. And start with you, Joey, about Bobrovsky. How did he look in that first round? I mean, do you think he'll be able to match Vasilevskiy? I mean, he was really good during the season, but again, had an up and down period of time there and I don't think he looked the best in that first round.
I think he looked okay. A lot of the times where some goals went in, it was sometimes the defense just kind of leaving him out to dry. But when Bobrovsky was needed, he showed up in a big hurry in pretty much every single one of those games, with the exception of their 6-1 blowout loss. But Bobrovsky stepped up in a big hurry. He's returned to that Vezina form. I do believe he can keep up with Vasilevskiy for sure. And if it wasn't for Carter Verhaeghe, I would have put down Bobrovsky as the series MVP, because he stepped up when needed, and he played lights out almost every single night when he had to.
Yeah, he did bounce back towards the last 2 games, he was really good. So, he can match definitely Vasilevskiy. I mean, Jim, what else can we say about Vasilevskiy in the playoffs? I mean, he allowed his first goal in those elimination games, had 6 straight shutouts or something crazy like that. He just comes to play in those clutch moments. How do you think he'll do in this series against another opponent that will challenge him, because they've got a lot of great shooters over there?
Well, I think he'll do just fine. A lot with him when Tampa Bay got blown out, and other times where, he wasn't great early on. I think up until, the last couple of games, they were letting in, 3 goals a game or more. A lot of that had to do with the defense. There was a lot of rebounds that Toronto pounced on right in front of the net. They had some, pretty good open looks. Vasilevskiy will just be fine. Cooper said last night he's never seen him more dialed in, and that's, about what you can expect from him. I think, on the other hand, I think for Florida with Bobrovsky, what happened last year and how many times are the media going to ask everybody about that? And is that stuff going to, play in his head? I mean, I think it's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
They will tell you that it doesn't. It's last year and all that other stuff. But at some point, does it? And how much? It's going to get hammered on him. It'll be brought up. So, and I think if he, starts out really good, I think you're going to see, the Bobrovsky that, we saw this year, and then things will be, fairly even in that sense.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, it's the mental game that may come into play. Who knows, especially when it gets down to a point, if it gets to a 6th or 7th game and you're matching against a guy who's been there for, so many times, has so much success, he's going to be mentally dialed in all the time. But Bobrovsky may have, he may have some doubt, especially if he lets in a weak goal or whatever. But, it's a great matchup for the goaltending side as well. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Let's look at some X factors that could potentially come into this series. We had Carter Verhaeghe, of course, come into play in the last series as being an X factor. Jim, what do you think about X factors for the Lightning? Who's like Nick Paul? I mean, who would have thought Nick Paul was the X factor in that Game 7? Who could potentially be that in this series?
Well, I think it's going to have to be Nick Paul, especially if Braden Point misses, any or the games in that series, because he's that kind of guy. When they brought him in, the phrase around him was built for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think when they made that trade, it looked like it was something, maybe to do with the cap, but I think this kind of gritty player is going to help us. And he did. He actually played pretty good throughout the entire series. He was kind of, you didn't notice him that much, but when you really looked at it, he did a lot of really nice things in the series. And, in Game 7, we saw what he did, and he's going to have to do that. Line mate, if Russ Colton plays with him, he's another one that's going to have to play well. And I think anybody on the defense not named Victor Hedman is going to have to play better against Florida than what they did against Toronto.
Yeah, that's a great point on the defense for sure. Joey, do you have anyone on the Panthers that could potentially be an X factor? Like we said, Verhaeghe was one in the first round. Who else could potentially be that in this series?
Other than Carter Verhaeghe, I mean, because that's I was gonna say the same thing, but I think other than Carter Verhaeghe, I think it's gonna be Sam Bennett again. He didn't really show too much in the first round, but like I said before, he's built for that kind of playoff run, and he's willing to get into those dirty areas. He's not willing to shy away from any grit. He may take some stupid penalties here and there, but he is one of the players that's willing to jump in when necessary, and I think it's going to pay off massive dividends. He did in the last series they had against Tampa. He had a point in every single game except the last one and the one he got suspended for, and I don't think that's going to change this next playoff series.
Well, Bennett has been an X factor all the way back when he played against the Canucks in that first time he had, I think it was 18 or 19 or something like that. And he was annoying to play against. So he's developed into a very effective player on the Panthers, and really underrated trade at the time when they made it. So he could definitely be an X factor in this series. Let's look into who's going to win this. Jim, ask the question. The Tampa Bay Lightning will win this series if
they play Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. I mean, if they do, I mean, I still think they're the best on paper, even though they didn't, do it during the regular season. I think you saw what they could do in a series where they really weren't their best, but they still played Tampa Bay hockey for at least 4 games to win a series. If they do that, I think they win.
That's perfect way to put it. Because if the Lightning play the way they can, they're very tough to beat. Joey, Florida Panthers will win this series
if they play Florida Panthers regular season
there
hockey. No, but if they just keep up their good goal scoring, if their stars step up in the big moments they can, if they stay out of the box, Tampa will not hesitate to make you pay on the power play. And just keep playing their game. And just pretty much just keep playing the way they've been doing. Just like I said, stay out of the box and start converting on the power play more. Despite winning the series, despite winning the last series, they went 0 for 18 on the power play. Power play goes overrated, am I right, boys? I'm kidding. The point being is, yes, they need to convert on their special teams. I think that's very important for the series.
And I think that's another point to bring up about power plays, because penalties were a big issue in, the Lightning and Maple Leaf series. There was a lot of them called. A lot of them were deserved. There was you get the idea that playoff hockey, the whistles go away. It didn't in that series. And it'll be curious to see whether or not it will in this one. And I think a lot of it had to do, especially early on, with the physicality of play.
Yeah.
And we know that Florida and Tampa Bay can get pretty physical with each other if it gets to that. So I think that's going to be a big thing too. The power plays, and how are the officials going to call these?
Yes.
Yeah, I do believe the refs will probably be a bit more like on top of things, because if you remember the last game against each other, there was bloodshed. It was pretty.
Yeah.
I do believe the refs will be a bit more on top of this one. It all depends on, but of course, I don't know how. With all due respect, I don't know how fair they're going to be. There was a lot of questionable calls for both Florida and Tampa last series. So, but at the same time, like I said, with the physicality of just the series itself from last year and even the regular season, I do believe the refs are going to be a bit more on top of everything. I don't think they're going to let as much stuff go.
Well, the history of these two teams, like we mentioned before, it's there. So the refs are going to be definitely dialed into that, I think, in this series. So we'll see how it all goes, because that's going to be a big factor for sure. Let's end with some final predictions on this series. Start with you, Jim. Who is going to win this? And what's the series going to end up as?
I'm going to go with Tampa Bay in 6.
In 6, another long series. I can definitely see that going. Joey, what do you think?
I'm going to say Panthers in 7. I think this goes the full length. The teams are just way too close to one another. I think this goes the full length. So I'm going to say Panthers in 7.
I'm going to go with Panthers in 7 as well. I think this series it's very tough to gauge. I think, it could go either way, but I'm going to go Panthers just because I think they have a little bit more depth than the Lightning forward wise. So, but I've been wrong in the first round quite a bit. So don't go by my prediction. I'm probably going to be wrong.
I got right last
week, hoping that you will be wrong. So that's good. Let's go the opposite. Okay, I'm getting on right now.
I was right last round, but I've had a very, very long history of being wrong. So
that's why I don't bet on these games. So, so thanks guys for coming on for another for a preview show here. It's good previewing this series, because it's to be an interesting series to watch, fun series to watch, and we got 2 already coming that is going to be good, and potentially a battle of Alberta coming in. If Calgary can pull it out tonight, we're going to have a battle of Alberta in the second round, which is going to be fun. So we'll see how that goes. We already got the battle of Florida. So
I'm going to need to ask for a couple days off of work.
It's going to be fun. So thanks, Jim and Joey, for coming on the show. And we'll see who's going to be left next time to preview the next series.
All right.
Make sure you're following both these guys writing. Jim does a lot of the takeaways after the Lightning game, so keep out for that. Look out for that for after the games of this series. Joey does the similar thing for the Panthers. Keep an eye out for all that coverage, and make sure you're following us on Twitter and Facebook as we keep bringing you the playoffs. And of course, the draft is coming up as well. We got full-blown draft coverage already with profiles coming and features and all that fun stuff. So thanks for watching another preview show, and we'll see you next time for another one.